I'd like to thank everybody for joining me today. Today, I want to talk about planning for beneficiaries. We talk a lot with our clients, typically mom and dad or grandma and grandpa, and we're talking about them and making sure things fit for them. But I also want to make sure we take the time to think about the beneficiaries and what's best for them. So, if you in this conversation, we're talking about who gets something, and we talk about the what. A lot of times we're talking about the assets, the income. What is it that we're passing along? And I don't know if we spend a lot of time or as much time talking about when and how we're going to pass those assets to those beneficiaries. And if you think about that, there's problems that can come up. Are we giving specific gifts or part of the residuary? Are we giving dollar values or percentages? And also, let's be honest, there's going to be those messy situations that just take more time to discuss. So as we go through this, think about this from the beneficiary map point of view. When we're looking at this, there's three things that we have to be aware of and making sure that there's a coordination across the whole plan. So first, we focus a lot on wills and trusts, whether it's irrevocable trust, revocable living trust, all of these. These are the assets, and think about probate assets. These are assets that we have to address. How are we going to get them to that next generation or future beneficiaries? And are we going to do that through the residual amount? And in that revocable living trust or in that irrevocable trust, we can say that residuary does XYZ as it goes to the beneficiaries. We can also route gifts into trust for protection. So trusts provide a lot of opportunity. We also have beneficiary forms. Think about the retirement accounts, life insurance. These have contracts. These are contracts that have beneficiary designations. And those beneficiary designations are going to override what we put in the will. So we may have that and say, well, we wanted, you know, our son to get the life insurance, but we put that inside of the trust. And in the beneficiary designation on the life insurance, we say, oh, it's going to go to daughter. Well, daughter's going to receive it because that's what the beneficiary form tells the life insurance company to do, and they have to abide by the contract. We also have to look at ownership of titles. With the ownership of titles, think about the real estate. If we own, own real estate, maybe with a business partner, and that gets titled as joint with right of survivorship. Well, upon death, that doesn't go into the trust. That doesn't go through will and through probate. That will go ending up to the business partner because it said with right of survivorship. So, irregardless of what our trust or will says, that title says it has to go to the person named on the deed. So, when you start looking at this beneficiary map, the wills, the trusts, the beneficiary forms, the ownership titles, all of these things matter, and some will take precedence over our plan if we're not coordinating correctly. So take the time to make sure all of this matches. Next is the order of gifts. So when we're doing our estate plan, we always want to do things simple. Simple may not be the most correct way to do this. And so we have to take time to think about it. If you think about the order of gifts, the first thing that we look at is our specific gifts. Specific gifts are we have a named person and we have a named item. So think about this, it's mom's wedding ring. Mom's wedding ring goes to oldest daughter. Okay. We've identified the person, we've identified the gift. Now we have to make sure we address other parts of that specific gift. What happens if daughter predeceases mom? Now what? Does it go to somebody else? Well, if we don't specify, it goes down into the residual. We also have a problem of what happens if that ring doesn't exist anymore? Well, if we can't find it, the executor of the trust or of the estate or the trustee of the trust has to say, can't find it, therefore it must have already been given away. And so we can't take ownership and control over that asset. So we want to make sure the specific gifts are correct. The next one is cash or general gifts. So if I say, I want my brother to get $100,000. Okay, we've done our specific gift. Now the next thing I give 100, the executor or the trustee will give that 100,000 to my brother. And finally, whatever's left after we've done specific gifts, general gifts, whatever's left is the residual. And with that residual, think about that's the bucket underneath that everything falls into. And then we decide who does that go to. And typically that's going to be by percentage. So 3 kids, they each get, 1/3 of whatever's left. So the gifts are going to go in the right order. How we get those is going to be the next part of this. So if you think about dollar amounts versus percentages, dollar amounts are simple, easy to look at. I want my church to get $100,000. It's easy. You've identified the church. You've got the EIN number for the church. Okay, now whoever's in charge of this will sit there and say, I've got the charity. Now I write them a check for $100,000. That gift's taken care of. Now, you've got to be careful here because what about inflation? Did we want to give more if our estate inflated? Or think about the reverse. What if the estate deflated? What if we've spent that money in retirement for long-term care, whatever it is, and now all of that money goes to the charity versus the kids? So dollar amounts are good, easy ways to do it. We just have to make sure we're updating that along the way. Percentages in some cases may work better. And we say, well, I want to give my charity 10% of the estate. So the trustee or the executor of the estate will go through, okay, it's $1 million times 10%. That's $100,000. Easy, done. Now, if the estate went to 2 million, the charity gets 2 million or $200,000 if it's 10%. Or if it decreased to 500,000, they get 10% of whatever that number is. So the percentages or dollar amounts work. We just need to stay on top of it and make sure we're reviewing it. When I'm talking about other situations, do we have special needs child or grandchild that we want to be taken care of? If this person is relying on means tested benefits, government benefits that are based on income and assets, well, if we all of a sudden give them a large inheritance through the estate, that may get them kicked off their current benefits. Another way to do this is set up a special needs trust with a trustee that can manage that asset and use that to provide additional support to our special needs child or grandchild. So a special needs trust provides a way to basically take care of that child or grandchild like mom and dad would have, and use the government programs that are available and helping, and supplement in with the other money without getting them booted off the means tested support. The other one is looking at beneficiaries that just may need some extra guardrails. They have spending problems, addictions, creditor and divorce issues. All of these things, we look at and say, if we gave them a lump sum of money, may not be the best thing, but we still want to take care of them. So we can set up trusts through the estate plan that have distribution provisions in there that are discretionary. The trustee can take care of them, buy a home inside the trust and let them live in the home, have a car for their support, give them money at certain times. Or the big thing is have a spendthrift clause that protects the assets away from that person's creditors. So all of these things, can help. We just want to make sure that we do it in a way that we're looking at our beneficiaries and saying, are there issues out there that we can help alleviate through proper estate planning by paying attention to our beneficiaries as well as working with our clients on what they're doing? When you finally get down to it, it's, taking the time to do it right. Here's a beneficiary, audit homework that I give to a lot of the clients I work with And the big thing is, let's list out everything, every account that has a beneficiary. Let's make sure that as we go through this, we've identified all of the assets, we've identified where it should go, how it should go, and make sure that the estate plan, the beneficiary documents, and the titles all match. And more importantly, that we're reviewing these on a regular basis so that we can keep that updated and make the changes that make sense. So I appreciate everybody getting on. If you have questions, reach out. If not, we'll talk again next week. Thank you.